What happens when one of the world's most famous pianists challenges the genius of Elon Musk? What unfolds next will surprise you. The tension between the realms of art and technology has always been a subject of debate, but what happens when two icons from opposite ends of these worlds collide? What happens when someone who has dedicated their life to the purity of music dares to question the visionary that is reshaping the future of humanity? Alexandra Hart, a name revered by millions around the world, stood in front of the camera, her fingers lightly resting on the edge of her piano. Her icy gaze pierced through the lens, sharp, direct, and unyielding. She had been asked to comment on the so-called genius of Elon Musk, the man who, just a few months ago, launched a car into space and is now planning to send humans to Mars. The interviewer, a bright-eyed young journalist with a passion for tech, had been keen on hearing her thoughts. Elon Musk, the journalist had asked, what do you think about his impact on the world? Is he truly the visionary everyone says he is? Alexandra paused. The room fell silent as she took a deep breath. Look, she began, her voice steady yet sharp, I respect innovation, I really do. But, what is it exactly that he's creating? Rockets? Cars? Sure, those are impressive feats, but none of them are art. None of them stir the soul the way a single note on a piano does. She leaned forward slightly, her words gaining more intensity. Musk's world is a world built on technology, on numbers, on profit margins. It lacks the one thing that truly matters, heart. His vision is built on cold equations, not the warmth of human emotion. The interview went viral almost immediately. Alexandra Hart had been famous for her piano performances, but this wasn't about music. This was about a clash of ideologies. The world, which had always adored her music, now had a new question to consider. Could an artist, someone whose life was dedicated to the intangible beauty of sound, truly understand and critique the far-reaching impact of someone like Elon Musk? Her critics and fans quickly picked sides. Some agreed with her. Art, after all, was about feeling, about expression. How could someone so immersed in technology, in machines, space, and engineering, possibly comprehend the depths of human emotion that an artist like Alexandra could convey with just one movement of her hands? Others, however, found her dismissive, out of touch with the world around her. Musk was changing the future, he was creating the impossible, making humans more than just creatures of Earth. To some, he was the artist of this new world. Alexandra never expected the response to be so explosive. Yet, deep down, she knew the tension between the worlds of technology and art wasn't new. It had been there for centuries, the artist versus the engineer, the dreamer versus the doer. But what was new, what caught her by surprise, was that the very man she had criticized had something to say about it. Less than 24 hours after the interview aired, the world was buzzing with Musk's response. His tweet was simple but loaded with implications. Come see the future for yourself, Alexandra. I'll show you the intersection of art and technology. It wasn't just a tweet. It was a challenge. The media erupted. Musk versus Hart, the artist who doubted the visionary, the headlines screamed. People were captivated. Would Alexandra accept? Was it a publicity stunt? Was Musk simply trying to prove her wrong? Or was this something more, an invitation to a dialogue between two seemingly opposing worlds? And so, with the world watching, Alexandra Hart made a decision. She had never been one to shy away from a challenge. Her career had been built on defying expectations, on breaking barriers within the classical music world. But this was different. This wasn't a concert hall filled with familiar faces. This was a world of technology, innovation, and progress, and it was something she had always viewed with skepticism, even disdain. Could she, a person who believed in the sanctity of human emotion, truly understand what Musk was doing? Could she, an artist, truly learn something from a man who reshaped entire industries? But there was something about the invitation that stirred her. Perhaps it was the part of her that still craved a challenge, the part that wanted to understand, to learn, and to grow. Or perhaps it was simply curiosity, the desire to confront the future on her own terms, to see if there was more to Musk than just rockets and cars. The day she boarded the flight to California, Alexandra couldn't shake the feeling that her life was about to change in ways she couldn't predict. She had long prided herself on her artistry, but now she was about to step into the heart of Silicon Valley, into the world of Elon Musk, the very person she had criticized publicly, the person whose name was now as famous as any rock star or composer. The flight was long, and the hours dragged on as she replayed her thoughts. She had always believed that the true soul of music, of art, came from a place beyond technology, beyond innovation. Could this new world of machines and AI truly be the future of creativity? Was she wrong about Musk? Or worse, had she misunderstood the power of technology to enhance, rather than replace, what she had spent a lifetime creating? Her phone buzzed as she sat back in her seat. It was a message from her manager: "Don't forget, this is your chance to show the world that the future isn't just about tech. It's about preserving what we have, the human spirit." Alexandra smiled at the message, but a part of her wondered if it was time to rethink her stance on the intersection of art and technology. As her plane touched down in California, she had no idea what she was walking into, but she knew one thing for certain: she was about to see the future, and maybe, just maybe, the future would see her in a completely new light. What happens when one of the world's most famous pianists challenges the genius of Elon Musk? Stay tuned, because the answer will surprise you. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Alexandra Hart wasn't just a pianist, she was a living legend in the world of classical music. Her name evoked the image of grace, precision, and an almost supernatural ability to turn every note into a story. Born to a family of musicians, her talent had been evident from the moment she touched a piano at the age of 3. Her early years were filled with practice and performance, not childhood games or carefree moments. She was a prodigy, a title that both uplifted and trapped her. Her father, Gregory Hart, had been a celebrated violinist in his time, and he was determined that his daughter would surpass him. He had pushed her harder than any teacher, demanding perfection with every piece she played. The demands of his expectations had cast a shadow over Alexandra's childhood. She had spent so many hours locked in her practice room, surrounded by sheet music, that it felt like a cage, albeit one gilded with the promise of greatness. It wasn't just the piano that had shaped Alexandra's world, it was her father's relentless drive for her to be the best. His approval was both a gift and a curse. Alexandra's relationship with her father had always been strained, the love between them tangled in the strings of performance. He was the one who taught her the technicalities, the intricate ways to evoke emotion through sound. But he was also the one who made her believe that nothing short of perfection was acceptable. Her mother, a former opera singer, had been a quieter influence. She had often been absent during Alexandra's formative years, caught up in the demands of her own fading career. Alexandra grew up feeling like she was in competition with a version of her mother who had already peaked. The pressure to meet impossible standards, combined with the cold absence of her mother's support, had shaped Alexandra's views on success and art. She didn't just want to be good, she needed to be the best, to earn the approval that seemed so hard to come by. As she grew older, Alexandra became a fixture in concert halls around the world. Her performances were legendary, and critics adored her. Yet, despite her immense success, there was always a lingering sense of isolation. She had never been able to escape the shadow of her parents' expectations, nor had she fully reconciled the distance that had formed between her and the rest of the world. Music, for Alexandra, was both a refuge and a cage. It was an expression of everything she felt inside: joy, sorrow, longing, and regret. But it also had a cost. Over the years, Alexandra had made a name for herself not just as a pianist, but as someone who believed fiercely in the purity of art. To her, music was the ultimate expression of the human soul. It wasn't something to be commodified or used as a tool for anything other than expression. She believed that technology, no matter how advanced, could never capture the raw emotion that poured out of an artist's fingertips. In her eyes, it was humanity's imperfections that gave music its power, not the precision of machines. When she was asked to comment on Elon Musk, it wasn't just a casual remark. It was a confrontation with everything she had believed about the world. To Alexandra, Musk was the embodiment of the cold, calculated future that technology represented. A future where humans were replaced by robots, where art was measured in numbers and data points. She couldn't stand the idea that something as human as music could be overshadowed by machines, no matter how innovative or impressive they were. But it wasn't just Musk that Alexandra resented. She had always been skeptical of how technology was infiltrating every aspect of human life. She saw it as an intrusion, one that threatened to dilute the authenticity of personal experience. Art, she believed, had to be real, lived, felt, and performed by real people. The idea that technology could somehow replace or improve upon the human experience was something she couldn't accept. Yet, deep down, Alexandra knew that part of her rejection stemmed from fear. Fear of being left behind in a world that was rapidly changing. Fear of losing her place in a society that seemed to be placing more value on innovation than on tradition. And, perhaps most tellingly, fear of the very technology that had once seemed like a distant, unimportant aspect of life, now creeping into her world in ways that she could no longer ignore. Her rejection of Musk was also a rejection of the future. The piano, for Alexandra, was the embodiment of something timeless. When she played, it wasn't just about the music, it was about the connection between the performer and the listener, the unspeakable bond that was formed through shared emotion. Could something as sterile as a machine ever replicate that? Despite her reservations, Alexandra couldn't help but wonder, as her public feud with Musk gained traction, if there was more to this than she had originally thought. Was she, too, being swept up in the very thing she feared, the march of progress, the inevitability of change? She was at the peak of her career, her place in the world secure. But now, with Musk's challenge hanging in the air, something stirred inside her. A sense of curiosity, perhaps, or a challenge to the very beliefs that had defined her. Could there be room for both, the heart of art and the power of technology? As Alexandra boarded the plane to California, she was torn. Part of her felt justified in her stance, believing that her rejection of Musk's world was a defense of everything she held dear. Yet another part of her wondered if she was being closed-minded, unwilling to confront a future that was already in motion. This wasn't just a challenge from Musk, this was a question to her very identity. Was she a true artist, or had she become a prisoner of tradition? Was it possible to be both an artist and an innovator, or were the two worlds destined to remain forever separate? The flight to California gave her plenty of time to think, and as the plane touched down in Silicon Valley, Alexandra realized that this was not just about proving Musk wrong. This was about finding the answer to a question she had never dared to ask herself: could the future of music be something more than what she had always known? As she stepped off the plane and into the bright California sun, she had no idea what awaited her. But one thing was certain: her world, and her understanding of it, was about to be shaken in ways she could never have imagined. The day after Alexandra Hart's bold comments about Elon Musk were aired to the world, her phone was buzzing non-stop. Messages from fans, critics, and industry peers flooded her inbox, but it was the one from her manager, Nathan, that caught her eye. Alexandra, it's official. Elon Musk has invited you to his SpaceX facility to see the future of art and technology. He's personally extended the invitation. You need to think this through, but I'll tell you, this is big. The world is watching. The words, personally extended the invitation, echoed in her mind. A part of her wanted to dismiss it as another publicity stunt. Musk was known for his theatrics, for turning every interaction into a global spectacle. But another part of her, a quieter, more curious part, wondered if there was more to it than she was willing to admit. As the days passed and the media frenzy continued, the question on everyone's mind was, would Alexandra accept the invitation? Her social media accounts exploded with comments: with some of her most ardent fans urging her to stand firm and defend the purity of art, while others encouraged her to take the opportunity to engage with Musk, to open her mind to a world she might not understand. Alexandra wasn't one to make decisions lightly. She had spent years building a reputation of being unyielding in her beliefs, never wavering on her stance about the relationship between technology and art. She had often criticized the encroachment of technology into the arts, seeing it as a threat to the authenticity of human expression. But now, faced with the opportunity to actually see Musk's world firsthand, she found herself torn. Sitting at the piano in her New York apartment, the keys before her were silent. For once, the music that usually flowed so easily through her fingers seemed distant, as though it was no longer hers to command. She ran her hands over the smooth surface of the instrument, feeling the coolness of the polished wood beneath her fingertips, the very symbol of what she held dear. "Should I do it?" she asked aloud, though no one was there to answer. "Is it worth stepping into the unknown for a man whose world seems so disconnected from everything I believe in?" It wasn't just the challenge Musk posed, it was the very essence of what his invitation represented. To accept would be to acknowledge that there might be something in technology that could enhance the human experience, something she had always been skeptical of. But to reject it outright would solidify her stance, making her a martyr of sorts in the eyes of her followers. She would forever remain the artist who stood against the machines. Days passed in a haze of indecision, but eventually, the decision was made. Alexandra knew that she couldn't ignore the weight of the situation. This wasn't just about Musk, it was about her. It was about confronting the boundaries of her own beliefs and seeing if the future could offer something she had never considered. The flight to California was uneventful, filled with the constant hum of her swirling thoughts. She hadn't told anyone about her decision yet, not even Nathan. Part of her didn't want to make it public until she knew exactly what she was walking into. The SpaceX facility was located in Hawthorne, California, a place she had heard of but never imagined she'd visit. When the car pulled up to the gates, the sheer scale of the place hit her. This was not just a building. It was a world. The walls seemed to stretch into infinity, and the futuristic design screamed innovation at every corner. As she stepped out of the car, she felt small. Small in a way that she hadn't felt in years. It wasn't the kind of smallness that came from standing before a massive orchestra or a sold-out concert hall. It was the kind of smallness that came from stepping into the unknown, where everything you thought you knew might be turned upside down. A guide led her through the facility, and Alexandra couldn't help but marvel at the technology that surrounded her. Everywhere she looked, there were signs of Elon Musk's influence, from the sleek, gleaming rockets in the distance to the wall of screens tracking progress in real time. It was a world she didn't understand, a world that seemed to operate on principles far beyond her own. But what really struck her was the way the people moved within this space. They were absorbed in their work, focused, driven by something larger than themselves. There was an energy here, something palpable in the air, a sense of urgency, but also purpose. It was a stark contrast to the world of classical music, where the process was slower, the atmosphere more contemplative. The guide led her to a private room where she was to meet Musk. The moment she stepped inside, she felt the change in the air. There, standing in front of her, was the man she had so harshly criticized just days earlier. He was different from the image she had built in her mind. He wasn't the cold, distant genius she had imagined. There was an energy to him, a strange intensity that seemed to vibrate in the air around him. "Elon," she greeted, her voice steady, though inside, she felt a flicker of nerves. "I didn't expect you to actually follow through with the invitation." Musk smiled, a slight smirk playing at the corner of his lips. "Well, I thought you'd enjoy seeing it for yourself. After all, you're an artist. You appreciate innovation, right?" Alexandra raised an eyebrow. "I appreciate art. Innovation, perhaps, but only when it serves a purpose that enhances the human experience." Musk's smile faded slightly, but he didn't back down. "That's what I'm here to show you. It's not about machines taking over. It's about pushing the boundaries of what we're capable of, together. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with unspoken meaning. Alexandra wasn't sure what to make of them. She had always seen Musk's world as a challenge to her own, but standing in his presence now, she realized that she didn't fully understand his vision. There was a part of her, buried deep inside, that felt a stirring of curiosity, not just about the technology he had created, but about the man himself. The tour of the SpaceX facility would be the beginning of something far bigger than either of them could have imagined. The following morning, Alexandra was whisked away on a tour of SpaceX's sprawling facility. The scale of it was overwhelming, the vast concrete halls, the dizzying heights of rockets suspended in midair, the palpable sense of excitement that buzzed through the air. Every corner of the building seemed to hum with the promise of something far beyond anything she had encountered in her world of music. "Welcome to the future," Elon Musk said as they walked through the sleek corridors. His voice was calm, but there was an undeniable intensity in his eyes. His excitement was contagious, and despite herself, Alexandra found her curiosity growing. She had expected the SpaceX facility to be filled with scientists, engineers, and robots, but what she didn't anticipate was the palpable energy that reverberated through the space. It was more than just technology, it was a feeling of collective purpose, of people driven by a shared dream. She couldn't help but admire the vision that Musk had cultivated here, even if it was one she hadn't fully understood yet. As Musk led her past rows of engineers hunched over screens, she couldn't help but be struck by the contrast between their work and her own. These men and women weren't creating melodies or painting landscapes, they were building rockets, revolutionizing space travel, and shaping the future of humanity. Yet, there was something oddly similar between their intense focus and her own on-stage performances. The same passion that fueled her piano playing seemed to fuel their work here, an unspoken commitment to creating something that would outlast them. Musk stopped at a large display screen, showing intricate blueprints for the Starship, the vehicle that would carry humanity to Mars. "This is where it all begins," he said, his hands sweeping across the digital design. "The future of human exploration. Of creating a multiplanetary civilization." Alexandra nodded, trying to absorb the magnitude of what Musk was showing her. It was hard for her to wrap her mind around the idea of space travel, something that felt so distant, so intangible. Yet, she could sense the gravity of the moment. Musk was talking about pushing the boundaries of human existence, of transcending Earth, of venturing into the unknown. She couldn't help but think about her own world, her own art. Was it possible to push those boundaries in the same way? Could music evolve beyond the confines of tradition? Could technology help her find new ways to express what she had always believed was the ultimate form of human connection? Musk, as if sensing her unspoken thoughts, turned to her. "I know what you're thinking," he said. "You're wondering what any of this has to do with music, right?" Alexandra blinked, surprised by his perceptiveness. She hadn't voiced her thoughts aloud, yet Musk seemed to have a way of reading her that was both unsettling and impressive. "Well," she said carefully, "I'm curious how you see technology and art intersecting. I've spent my whole life believing that art is something purely human, an expression of our deepest emotions, something that can't be replicated by machines." Musk gave a knowing smile. "That's where you're wrong, Alexandra. Art, in its purest form, is about human experience. But it's also about evolution. Music, art, technology, they're all expressions of what it means to be human. And like everything else, they have to adapt. They have to evolve if they're going to keep up with where we're headed." Alexandra paused, absorbing his words. She had always viewed art as something timeless, something grounded in human emotion. The piano, to her, was the ultimate instrument for conveying this. The keys were not just keys. They were vessels for emotion, for everything she had ever felt. But Musk was challenging that notion. Could art evolve alongside technology? Could it embrace the new in the way he was embracing the unknowns of space? They moved on to another section of the facility, this one dedicated to AI and robotics. As Alexandra stepped inside, she was met with an entirely different world, rows of machines, programmed to perform intricate tasks with precision. There were robots playing musical instruments, creating sculptures, and even painting on canvases. The first time Alexandra saw one of the robots play the piano, she was struck by its mechanical precision. It wasn't quite the same as a human's touch, there was no soul in the notes it played, no raw emotion, but it was flawless. Each note was clear, sharp, and clean, but it lacked the feeling that Alexandra had spent her life chasing. Musk watched her carefully as she took in the sight. "We've been experimenting with AI in the arts for years now," he said. "These robots can create music, paintings, even write poetry. But they can't feel. Not like we do. What they can do is show us new ways of thinking, new ways to express ourselves, new possibilities." For a moment, Alexandra stood still, her mind swirling with the implications of what Musk was saying. Could it be possible that technology had the potential to unlock new ways of experiencing art, even if it couldn't replicate the human experience? Could she, as an artist, learn to embrace the future without losing what she cherished about the past? She didn't know yet. But she was beginning to feel the stirrings of something deep inside her. It was a pull, a sense of wonder at the possibilities. For the first time since arriving, she wasn't just skeptical, she was beginning to feel a flicker of curiosity. Musk's voice broke through her thoughts. "I know you've been resistant to the idea of technology replacing the human touch in music. But what if it didn't replace it? What if it enhanced it?" Alexandra turned to face him. She could see the sincerity in his eyes, but more than that, she could see the fire of someone who truly believed in his vision. There was something magnetic about the way he spoke, something that made her wonder if she had been too quick to judge him and the world he represented. "How do you mean?" she asked, her voice soft but eager. Musk gestured toward one of the robots, which had just finished playing an intricate piece by Beethoven. "What if AI could help you compose? What if it could suggest notes, harmonies, or even melodies that you might not have considered? You would still be the artist, still the creator. But you'd have the ability to expand your mind in ways you never thought possible." The idea lingered in the air between them, and for a moment, Alexandra was speechless. She had always thought of music as something deeply personal, a reflection of her soul. But the thought of collaborating with technology in a way that expanded her creative boundaries was intriguing. The question she had never asked herself before was now hanging in her mind: could she integrate technology into her music without losing the humanity of it? The tour continued, but Alexandra's mind was miles away, lost in thought. She had come here to reject Musk's vision, to prove that art and technology could never coexist. But now, she was starting to wonder if she had been wrong all along. What if, instead of fighting change, she embraced it? The following evening, Alexandra sat in a private lounge within the SpaceX complex, staring out over the vast, illuminated expanse of Hawthorne, California. The city lights flickered below her, a reminder of the world that seemed so far removed from the sterile, futuristic environment she now found herself in. Her mind was in turmoil, a storm of conflicting thoughts swirling around her. The day had been filled with more encounters that blurred the lines between technology and artistry. She had seen robots that could compose symphonies, witnessed a computer program that analyzed centuries of musical history to predict what future compositions might sound like, and even listened to a machine-generated piece that sounded as though it had been composed by a great, long-dead composer. The experience had been overwhelming, exhilarating, even, but also deeply unsettling. She had spent years of her life championing the sanctity of human emotion in music, in art. She had built her entire career around the idea that there were elements of the human soul that no machine could replicate. And yet, as she stood in the midst of this cutting-edge technology, it was hard to deny that what she was witnessing was awe-inspiring. These machines, while lacking the soul of a human artist, were capable of creation in ways she had never imagined. Alexandra's phone buzzed on the table, snapping her out of her reverie. It was a message from Nathan. "Are you okay? I've been reading some of the media reports, and I just wanted to make sure you're holding up all right." There's a lot of attention on you right now. Her fingers hovered over the screen. She had been so absorbed in her thoughts that she hadn't checked her messages in hours. Nathan was right, the media had gone into overdrive, speculating about her time at SpaceX. Some outlets painted her as the champion of traditional art, standing firm against the tech-driven future. Others claimed she was on the verge of a complete transformation, ready to embrace the future of art as envisioned by Musk and his team. Alexandra typed back quickly, "I'm fine. Just processing. It's more than I expected." She set the phone down and returned to gazing out over the city. She had come to SpaceX thinking she knew exactly what she believed, thinking that she could prove that technology and art were incompatible. But now, standing at the crossroads of this futuristic world, she realized how little she truly understood about what was possible. What if she had been wrong all along? Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock at the door. It was Elon Musk. "You've been thinking a lot," he said, his voice low and calm, though there was a noticeable edge to it. He seemed more serious now, as if sensing the weight of the moment. "I've seen it in your eyes all day." Alexandra stood, her heart pounding. "I don't know what to make of all of this. I came here to reject it. To prove that technology can't replace the human element in art. But now, I'm not so sure anymore." Musk crossed the room and stood beside her, looking out over the cityscape. "It's not about replacing the human element," he said, his voice gentle yet insistent. "It's about expanding it. It's about reaching new heights, exploring new frontiers. The future isn't about choosing between art and technology. It's about learning to blend them in ways that make us all more human. Think about it, Alexandra. Imagine a world where art isn't limited by the tools we have, but instead, where new tools allow us to create on a scale we've never dreamed of." She turned to face him, her brow furrowed. "But does it still count as art if it's created by a machine? Doesn't something essential get lost when the process isn't entirely human?" Musk's eyes softened, and he stepped closer. "No one's asking you to let go of your humanity. We're just offering you new ways to express it. Imagine creating a piece of music, and instead of seeing the notes as obstacles, you could collaborate with an AI that gives you new possibilities, possibilities that would never occur to you otherwise. It's not about replacing what you do, it's about amplifying it." The room seemed to close in around her as his words sunk in. The idea of collaborating with technology had always seemed like a betrayal to her, like something that would strip away the very essence of her art. But now, standing in this futuristic space with Musk, her mind began to open to the possibilities. What if she could compose music that wasn't bound by the limitations of the human mind? What if there was something truly beautiful on the other side of this intersection between technology and art? She felt a flicker of hope, but it was mingled with fear. Fear of losing herself. Fear of the unknown. "But how do I even start?" she asked, her voice trembling ever so slightly. "I've spent my whole life developing my voice as an artist. Can I really just throw that all away and step into this world of machines and artificial intelligence?" Musk reached out, placing a hand on her shoulder, his grip firm but reassuring. "No one is asking you to throw anything away. What we're offering is a chance to explore new dimensions of your artistry. The tools are there, but you are still the one who decides what to create. No one can take away your soul, Alexandra. It's yours." Her heart raced as the weight of his words pressed against her. For the first time since arriving, she began to see the potential in what Musk was saying. She wasn't being asked to compromise her humanity. She was being invited to expand her creativity. To let go of her doubts and embrace a new way of thinking. And yet, there was still something holding her back, a lingering resistance, a fear of what it might mean to cross that line. As she stood there, facing Musk and the glowing future he was offering her, a realization hit her. The conflict inside her wasn't just about art. It was about who she was. About what she was willing to risk to evolve. "I can't make this decision right now," Alexandra said, her voice firm, though her heart was racing with uncertainty. "I need time." Musk nodded. "I understand. Take all the time you need. But remember, the future is waiting for those willing to embrace it. And when you're ready, we'll be here." With that, he turned and left the room, leaving Alexandra alone with her thoughts. The weight of the moment hung heavy on her shoulders. She had always prided herself on her ability to make decisions, but this was different. This was a choice that would define not just her career, but her very identity as an artist. As the city lights flickered below her, Alexandra realized that the path ahead wasn't as clear as she had once believed. But perhaps, just perhaps, that was the very essence of creativity, the willingness to embrace the unknown and allow it to change you. The question wasn't whether she could accept Musk's offer, but whether she was brave enough to let go of the past and step into a future that was still being written. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The days that followed were a blur of uncertainty and contemplation. Alexandra found herself caught between the familiarity of her past and the tantalizing unknown that Musk had presented her with. Every time she tried to sit down and play her piano, the melodies felt strained, as if something was missing. The music that once poured from her fingertips now seemed trapped, caught in an internal tug-of-war. She had always been a person who sought clarity, who thrived in a world defined by rules, tradition, and structure. But Musk's challenge, the idea of blending technology with her artistry, was shaking the foundations of everything she had known. Could she truly evolve her craft, integrate the cutting-edge tools of the future, and still preserve the very soul of what made her music unique? It was late one night when she found herself standing before her piano once more, the cool touch of the keys beneath her fingertips feeling both familiar and foreign. She closed her eyes, letting the silence stretch around her. The same silence that had once allowed her to create, to find her own voice. But now, there was something different in the air. It wasn't just silence anymore, it was the weight of possibility. The promise of something new. She remembered what Musk had said to her, "The tools are there, but you are still the one who decides what to create." The message was clear, she wasn't being asked to abandon her past, but rather to amplify it, to add to it. And that was where her true challenge lay: could she reconcile the old with the new, the human with the machine, and create something that would resonate with the world while remaining true to herself? Her fingers hovered above the keys. She took a deep breath, letting go of the fears that had kept her chained to the past. She wasn't just a pianist anymore, she was an artist, and an artist's journey was ever evolving. Maybe it was time for her to evolve, too. With that thought, she pressed down on the first note. The sound that emerged was pure, resonating through the room in a way that felt strangely new yet entirely familiar. As her fingers moved, the music began to flow in a way she hadn't expected. It was different from anything she had composed before, yet it felt like an extension of herself. The next day, Alexandra sat down with Musk and the team at SpaceX, her heart still racing from the night's revelation. She had made a decision, and it was one that terrified her. But it was also one that filled her with hope. "I've been thinking a lot," she said, her voice steady but filled with a quiet intensity. "I want to collaborate. I want to see how far this partnership can go. I can't just reject this new world, it's too exciting. Too full of possibilities." Musk's face softened, and he smiled, a smile that was equal parts satisfaction and understanding. "I'm glad to hear that, Alexandra. It's not about replacing what you do. It's about pushing the boundaries of what's possible. Together, we can create something that transcends the limitations of the past." With those words, the partnership between Alexandra and Musk began to take shape, marking the beginning of an artistic collaboration that would change the world of music forever. Together, they fused her human emotion with technology's precision, her passion with the possibilities of the future. As the months passed, Alexandra's music began to transform. Her compositions became a blend of classical beauty and futuristic innovation, a harmonious marriage of human expression and technological enhancement. She began using AI not as a replacement for her voice, but as an instrument, a tool that expanded her creative horizons and allowed her to explore new territory. The fusion of art and technology came to life in her new album, a collection that challenged the very definitions of what music could be. It was a stunning mix of orchestral arrangements and synthesized soundscapes, punctuated by AI-generated melodies that Alexandra helped refine and shape. The music was bold, ethereal, and deeply emotional, reflecting the journey she had taken, both as an artist and as a person. The album's release was met with overwhelming acclaim. Critics marveled at how Alexandra had seamlessly blended the past with the future, creating something entirely unique. The public, too, embraced the transformation, eager to see where this new direction would lead. But Alexandra knew that her music was no longer just about the notes. It was about the journey, the courage to step into the unknown, to evolve without losing herself in the process. In an exclusive interview with a major magazine, Alexandra was asked about her transformation. "You've often been outspoken about the importance of preserving traditional art. How do you reconcile that with your shift toward technology?" the interviewer asked. Alexandra paused for a moment, choosing her words carefully. "I think art has always evolved. It's not static. The moment we stop pushing the boundaries is the moment we stop being artists. For me, technology isn't something to fear. It's a tool. And like any tool, it can be used in ways that enhance our humanity, not replace it." She smiled softly, the weight of her journey apparent in her eyes. At the end of the day, it's about expressing what it means to be human. Technology may help us do that in new ways, but the heart, the soul, of the music remains the same. The interview went viral, sparking debates and discussions in the media, in classrooms, and in coffee shops across the world. Alexandra had gone from being a staunch defender of the old ways to becoming an advocate for change, for evolution. She had embraced the future without losing sight of the past, and in doing so, had created something that resonated with people in ways that only art could. As she sat in her studio, working on her next composition, she looked around at the instruments that surrounded her. There was the piano, her first love, the one that had always been the key to her soul. But now, beside it, were new tools. A computer, an AI system, a synthesizer, all waiting to help her take the next step. Alexandra knew that the journey she had embarked on wasn't over. It was only just beginning. She had discovered that the future of music, of art, was not about rejecting change, but about embracing it. It was about forging new paths, without ever losing sight of the heart and soul that made art truly powerful. And as she placed her fingers on the keys once more, she smiled. This was the beginning of something extraordinary, a fusion of the past, the present, and the future. A new chapter in music. A new chapter in her life. The future had arrived, and it was hers to create. The days following Alexandra's revelation were a whirlwind of interviews, meetings, and performances. News outlets across the world had caught wind of her bold collaboration with Elon Musk and the pioneering fusion of traditional artistry with cutting-edge technology. Alexandra's new album, which was a bold synthesis of human emotion and AI-generated sounds, was released to widespread acclaim, and the world began to take notice of the change she was spearheading. Her performances now had a new dimension to them. The stages she performed on were a blend of classical beauty, grand pianos, orchestras, sweeping curtains, and futuristic elements, with AI-driven lights and visuals that responded to the music in real time. It was a stunning experience, as if the music itself was alive, interacting with the environment around her. People marveled at the surreal, immersive experience of hearing her compositions while being surrounded by the pulsating energy of technology. One evening, as Alexandra played in a packed arena in New York City, the crowd was enraptured. The AI-generated visuals swirled around the space, illustrating the emotional peaks and valleys of the music. The audience was no longer just passive listeners, they were part of the experience, feeling the music through not only their ears but their entire beings. It was as if they were inside the music itself, enveloped in its every nuance. When the performance ended, the audience gave her a standing ovation that seemed to last forever. Alexandra stood at the center of the stage, overwhelmed by the response. It was a pivotal moment in her life. Not only had she opened herself up to the possibilities of the future, but she had become a symbol for what the fusion of human creativity and technological innovation could achieve. In that moment, Alexandra knew that she had crossed a threshold, not just as a musician, but as a trailblazer for a new era of art. Backstage, as she wiped the sweat from her forehead, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Musk. "Alexandra, that was incredible. You've just done something that no one else could have. The world is ready for this. We've only just begun." She smiled as she read the message, her thoughts drifting to the journey that had brought her here. From the skepticism of her first meeting with Musk to this moment of triumphant success, it had been a path of transformation, one she never could have predicted. But as the applause continued to echo in her mind, another thought lingered: what now? Where did she go from here? She had embraced the future, but how could she continue to push the boundaries, to create something even greater than what had already been done? The next morning, she sat in a quiet cafe in Los Angeles, sipping her coffee and reading through feedback from her fans and critics. The reviews were glowing, but it was the social media posts from her fans that captured her attention the most. One tweet caught her eye. It read, "Alexandra has redefined what it means to be an artist. She's not just a pianist. She's a bridge between humanity and technology. I can't wait to see where she goes next." The words resonated deeply with her. It wasn't just about the music anymore, it was about the role she played in the larger conversation about art and technology. She had become a symbol, a bridge, but for what? Was her role simply to explore and blend the old and the new, or could she inspire others to do the same? Could she lead a movement that would change the very definition of what it meant to create? Her thoughts were interrupted by the soft ding of an incoming message. It was Nathan. "Alex, I've been following everything, and I have to say, I'm so proud of you. But I know you're asking yourself what's next. You don't need to have all the answers right now. Just keep moving forward, and let the music guide you." Nathan's words were a comfort. She had always prided herself on being able to control the direction of her life, but now, she realized that sometimes, the journey didn't have a clear path. Sometimes, the music, and life itself, had to be allowed to unfold, to evolve organically. She had spent so much time thinking about what others would expect from her, but it was time to focus on what she wanted to create next. In the days that followed, Alexandra took a step back. She secluded herself from the noise, the endless interviews, and the praise. Instead, she sought inspiration from the things that had always grounded her: nature, literature, and the quiet moments of reflection. The AI technology that had been a part of her music was still there, waiting, but she no longer felt the need to use it at every turn. One evening, while walking along the beach at sunset, Alexandra closed her eyes and let the sounds of the waves wash over her. It was in this moment of stillness that she felt a sense of clarity. The technology had opened new doors, but it was the heart, the soul of her music, that would always be her foundation. She didn't need to rely on AI to create her best work. What she needed was balance, a harmonious fusion of both worlds, where technology served her artistry, not defined it. She returned to her studio, her mind clear. She decided that she would no longer chase the trends or push herself to create the next big thing. Instead, she would focus on creating music that resonated deeply with her, something that was true to her journey and her voice. Over the next few months, Alexandra began to compose a new album. This one was different. It was more intimate, more reflective. She combined the warmth of the piano with the precision of the AI-generated sounds, creating something that felt deeply personal yet expansive. She no longer saw technology as a tool for spectacle. It was now an extension of her voice, a partner in her creative process. When the album was finally released, the world took notice once again. It was not the grandiose spectacle of her previous work, but it was something more intimate, something that spoke to the soul. The critics hailed it as her most authentic work yet, and fans responded with even more enthusiasm. But it was the fans who connected with the deeply personal nature of the music that meant the most to her. This album was a reflection of who she had become, and the world had embraced it. Alexandra had found the balance she had been searching for. The fusion of technology and humanity was not about abandoning one for the other. It was about finding a way to integrate the two, allowing each to enhance the other in ways that made her artistry stronger. The result was a body of work that transcended boundaries, a new era of music that bridged the past, the present, and the future. As she looked back on her journey, Alexandra realized that she had discovered something far more important than she had ever expected. The true power of art is not in the tools we use, but in the heart and soul we put into the creation. Whether it was a piano, a brush, or an AI, it was the artist's vision that mattered most. And now, more than ever, Alexandra was ready to lead the world into a new era of creativity, one where technology and humanity could coexist, and where the music would always be at the heart of it all. As the year passed, Alexandra's new album resonated globally. Critics, fans, and even fellow artists began to recognize the subtle yet powerful message embedded in her work: technology could elevate artistry without overshadowing it. Her journey from skepticism to acceptance had created waves that rippled far beyond the realm of music. Her name had become synonymous with innovation, and she was no longer just a famous pianist. She was now a global symbol of creative evolution. It was an ordinary Tuesday morning when Alexandra received an unexpected call that would take her to new heights, an invitation to perform at the World Summit on Technology and Innovation in Paris. The summit, a prestigious event gathering visionaries from every field, had already invited Elon Musk as a key speaker. But Alexandra, the pianist who had bridged the gap between human emotion and artificial intelligence, had caught the attention of its organizers. "You've changed the landscape of music, Alexandra," the summit director told her over the phone. "Your story is one of resilience, creativity, and collaboration. We believe that you can inspire a global audience to think differently about the intersection of technology and humanity. We would be honored if you would perform." The offer sent a ripple of excitement through Alexandra. It wasn't just an invitation to perform on a grand stage. It was a platform to challenge the world's thinking about the future of art, about the possibilities that lay in combining creativity with cutting-edge innovation. It was a chance to solidify her role as a leader in this new era of artistic expression. In the days leading up to the summit, she worked tirelessly to prepare. Her performances had always been intense, but this was different. The venue would be unlike anything she had ever experienced. The audience would not just be music lovers, but leaders of industries, pioneers of artificial intelligence, virtual reality, space exploration, and more. The stakes were high, and Alexandra knew she had to deliver something that wasn't just a performance, but a statement. Elon Musk, who had become not only a business partner but also a mentor, was by her side throughout the preparation. They discussed the evolution of AI in music, the potential for creative synergy, and the importance of embracing the unknown. Musk had always been a figure who challenged the status quo, and he encouraged Alexandra to use this opportunity to push the boundaries even further. On the night of the performance, the Grand Theatre in Paris was a sea of influential figures from around the world. The stage was set with a futuristic setup, a grand piano, surrounded by floating screens that projected visualizations of the music. The atmosphere was electric, filled with anticipation. This wasn't just a concert, it was a demonstration of what art could become when technology and humanity came together. As the lights dimmed, Alexandra stepped onto the stage, her heart pounding. She wore a simple black dress, her hair pulled back in an elegant bun. But what mattered most was the presence she exuded. This was her moment to show the world what was possible when you dared to dream, when you dared to evolve. The first few notes she played were traditional, familiar, the soft melodies of a classic piece. The audience was lulled into a sense of calm, but they had no idea what was coming next. Alexandra's fingers danced across the keys, and then, almost imperceptibly, the sounds began to change. A subtle hum filled the room, as if the music itself was evolving in real time. The screens surrounding the stage flickered to life, displaying fluid, abstract visuals that seemed to pulse with the rhythm of the music. The transition was seamless. The piano continued to sing its traditional song, but now, AI-generated melodies began to weave their way through the piece. The audience could feel it, the music wasn't just a series of notes, it was an experience. It was alive, breathing, growing. As Alexandra played, the visuals behind her shifted, morphing into stunning landscapes and intricate geometric patterns that responded to every note, every chord. It was a visual and auditory symphony, a fusion of the old and the new. The climax of the performance came when Alexandra incorporated an AI-generated voice, an ethereal, almost human-like presence that joined her piano in a haunting duet. The voice, though synthesized, harmonized perfectly with her own, creating an emotional resonance that was unlike anything the audience had ever experienced. It was the culmination of everything she had learned, everything she had been working toward. When the final note played, the room was silent for a beat, as if the world had collectively held its breath. And then, the applause erupted, thunderous, sustained, overwhelming. It wasn't just appreciation for a performance, it was recognition of a revolution in the making. Alexandra had done it. She had created something that transcended the boundaries of music, something that challenged the very nature of creativity itself. Backstage, as she caught her breath and wiped away the sweat, Musk appeared with a grin on his face. "You've just changed the world, Alexandra." That was breathtaking. Alexandra smiled, her heart still racing from the performance. "I think we've only just begun." The performance at the World Summit was more than just a personal achievement for Alexandra, it was the spark that ignited a global conversation. News outlets around the world covered the event extensively, and social media exploded with reactions. People were fascinated by the way Alexandra had seamlessly integrated human emotion with artificial intelligence, creating an experience that was not just artistic, but revolutionary. The next few weeks were a blur of interviews and speaking engagements. Alexandra had become an ambassador for the future of art, and she embraced her role with grace and purpose. Her message was clear: technology was not something to fear, but something to embrace. It had the power to enhance human creativity, to take it to places that were previously unimaginable. But amidst the whirlwind of her newfound fame, Alexandra remained grounded. She never lost sight of the journey that had brought her here, the struggle, the doubt, and the eventual acceptance of the unknown. She had always known that true art was not about the tools you used, but the emotion you poured into it. Technology had simply opened a new door, and she had stepped through it. With every new performance, every new collaboration, Alexandra found herself pushing the limits of what was possible. She worked tirelessly with researchers, musicians, and AI specialists to further explore the potential of AI in music. Together, they began to experiment with new ways to integrate technology, creating compositions that were more dynamic, more interactive, and more immersive than ever before. And as her career continued to evolve, so did her vision. Alexandra no longer saw herself as just a pianist or a musician. She had become a visionary, a leader in the world of art and technology. The boundaries between the two were no longer distinct, they were intertwined, creating a new form of expression that was uniquely hers. As the world watched, Alexandra became a symbol of what was possible when human creativity and technology worked together. She had set the stage for a new era of music, one where the future of art was not defined by the past, but by the limitless possibilities of the future. And the world, it seemed, was ready for it. After her groundbreaking performance at the World Summit, Alexandra's life seemed to be in constant motion. Invitations for speaking engagements and performances came flooding in. She was no longer just a rising star in the classical world, she had become a global icon. People looked to her as a trailblazer, someone who had redefined the very essence of music and technology. But with this newfound fame came new pressures, and for the first time in a long while, Alexandra began to question herself. Her days were filled with endless interviews, photo shoots, and meetings. She had a packed calendar, yet the weight of it all was starting to take a toll. The music that had once come so naturally now felt like a challenge. The creative process, which had once been a beautiful expression of her soul, now seemed like a burden. She began to feel that she was caught in a constant race to innovate, to push the boundaries even further. But she couldn't shake the fear that perhaps she was losing touch with the very thing that had brought her success in the first place, her passion for music. One evening, after a particularly exhausting day, Alexandra found herself sitting alone in her apartment, staring at the piano. The keys, once so inviting, now seemed distant. She had always poured her heart and soul into her music, but now it felt like she was just following a formula. The creative spark she once had seemed to be fading, replaced by an overwhelming sense of pressure to keep up with expectations. Her phone buzzed, breaking her train of thought. It was a message from Nathan. "I know you're probably overwhelmed right now. Don't forget to take a step back and breathe. You're not alone in this, okay?" Alexandra read the message and let out a deep sigh. Nathan had always been her rock, the person who kept her grounded. He had been there from the beginning, supporting her even when the world hadn't recognized her potential. But lately, it felt as though he was the only person who truly understood her. She felt disconnected from everyone else, from her fans, from the world. All the praise, all the accolades, they didn't seem to mean as much as they once did. She needed to get away. For the first time in a long while, she craved solitude. The endless media coverage, the demands of her fans, and the pressure to innovate had taken their toll. She realized she needed to reconnect with herself, to rediscover the passion that had once fueled her music. The next morning, Alexandra decided to take a break from the limelight. She called her manager and cancelled the upcoming performances and interviews. Instead, she booked a quiet retreat in the mountains, far away from the noise and expectations. There, she would have no distractions, just the sound of nature and the quiet space to reflect. When she arrived at the retreat, nestled in the foothills of the Swiss Alps, Alexandra immediately felt the weight lift off her shoulders. The air was fresh and crisp, the landscape serene and untouched. She spent the first few days hiking, meditating, and reading. In the silence of the mountains, she could finally hear her own thoughts again. One morning, as she sat by a peaceful lake, the realization came to her. The music, the AI, the technology, they were all tools, but they weren't the heart of her art. She had become so consumed by the need to prove herself that she had lost sight of why she started making music in the first place. It wasn't about revolutionizing the industry or setting trends, it was about expressing the deepest parts of herself and sharing that with the world. Alexandra spent the next few days sitting at a grand piano in the retreat's music room, playing for hours. She didn't worry about what others expected. She played simply because it felt good. The music flowed more easily now, as if the pressures had evaporated with every note. She reconnected with the joy of creating, of bringing something into existence that was a part of her soul. In the evenings, she would sit by the fire, reflect, and write in her journal. She knew she needed to find a new path, one that was true to herself and her artistry, not shaped by the external pressures of success. She had to reclaim her passion and move forward in a way that felt authentic, even if it meant stepping away from the limelight for a while. When Alexandra finally returned to the public eye, she was a different person. The woman who stepped onto the stage at the next performance was no longer the one driven by the fear of failure or the need to impress. She had found peace within herself, and it showed in her performance. The music was deeper, more emotional, and more connected to her true self than ever before. Her audience noticed the change immediately. It wasn't just the technical mastery that had always been there, it was the heart. The performances were no longer about the grand spectacle of combining AI and classical music, they were about vulnerability, about sharing her personal journey through sound. Her next album, titled Echoes of the Soul, reflected this transformation. It was raw, unfiltered, and introspective. The AI elements were still present, but they served the music rather than dominating it. The melodies were simpler, but the emotion behind them was palpable. It was a return to her roots, a reminder of why she had picked up the piano in the first place. The album was met with critical acclaim, but it was the personal messages from fans that meant the most to her. They spoke of how her music had resonated with them on a deeper level, how it had touched something inside them that they hadn't even known was there. Alexandra had found her voice again, and the world had heard it. Through all of this, Alexandra had learned a valuable lesson: the greatest creativity comes not from chasing success or adhering to expectations, but from embracing one's own truth. She had rediscovered the art of music for music's sake, and it had made all the difference. But as she looked ahead, Alexandra knew that her journey wasn't over. She had faced her doubts, reclaimed her passion, and emerged stronger than ever. The road ahead was still uncertain, but one thing was clear: no matter where it led, she would continue to create from the heart. And in that, she knew, she would always find her way. Alexandra returned from her retreat transformed. The mountain air had cleansed not just her body but also her spirit. She felt a renewed sense of purpose, a quiet strength that had been absent for too long. The world had seen her as a brilliant pianist, a visionary pushing the boundaries of music with artificial intelligence, but now, Alexandra understood something deeper. It was not about what others expected from her, it was about what she could offer to the world from her heart. The release of Echoes of the Soul marked a pivotal moment in her career. It wasn't just an album, it was a reflection of her journey back to herself. Critics and fans alike recognized the shift in her music. It was more intimate, more raw, and filled with an emotion that had always been present but never quite this accessible. The album received rave reviews for its honesty, its vulnerability, and the way it blended the human and the technological with such delicate balance. But Alexandra didn't bask in the success for long. She knew that the true test was not how the world perceived her at that moment, but how she would continue to evolve and remain true to herself in the years to come. During a quiet evening at home, Alexandra sat down with Nathan, who had been her confidant throughout every chapter of her life. He had witnessed her rise, her struggles, and now, her return to herself. She looked across the room at him, her gaze steady but thoughtful. "You know, Nathan," she said, her voice carrying a sense of finality, "it's not just about the music anymore. It's about what I want my legacy to be." Nathan smiled, his eyes warm with understanding. "You've already made a lasting impact. You've changed the way the world thinks about music and technology." Alexandra shook her head, a faint smile crossing her lips. "But I don't want to just be remembered as a woman who revolutionized music. I want to be remembered as someone who dared to be vulnerable, who dared to show the world that creativity comes from the soul, not just from technology. The world needs more of that." Nathan leaned back in his chair, letting her words sink in. "So what's next?" Alexandra paused, her fingers lightly tapping on the side of her glass. "Next. I want to help other artists. I want to create a space where musicians can explore their full potential without the pressure of being perfect. A place where they can collaborate with technology but stay true to their own voices. And I want to ensure that the next generation understands that their creativity is a gift, not something to be stifled by expectations." It was clear that Alexandra was thinking beyond herself, beyond the music that had brought her fame. She envisioned a future where art and technology could coexist in a way that empowered artists rather than dictated their creative paths. She envisioned a world where the next generation of musicians could have the freedom to create without limits, without fear of judgment. In the months that followed, Alexandra began working on a new project, a collaborative initiative for young musicians. She partnered with AI specialists, music educators, and artists from all genres to create an online platform where aspiring musicians could experiment with AI-driven music creation, share their work, and get mentorship from established artists. It was a bold step, but Alexandra was determined to make her vision a reality. She called it the Music Collective, and it became an instant hit. Young musicians from all over the world flocked to the platform, eager to learn, collaborate, and explore new ways of expressing themselves. Alexandra's name became synonymous not just with groundbreaking performances, but with giving back to the music community. Through the music collective, Alexandra began to see the power of creativity in its purest form. She watched as young artists used the tools at their disposal to craft songs, symphonies, and electronic compositions that were unlike anything she had ever heard. Some of them, like her, had struggled with their own identity as artists. But in the collaborative, open environment she had created, they found a space to express themselves without fear of judgment or criticism. There was a deep sense of pride in Alexandra as she watched these young musicians develop. It reminded her of her own journey, the doubts, the challenges, and ultimately, the breakthrough that came from embracing her own voice. The more she interacted with the artists on the music collective, the more she realized that the future of music wasn't about forcing a particular style or sound. It was about freedom and expression. It was about helping others to trust in their unique voice, just as she had learned to do. As she continued to build her legacy, Alexandra also kept performing, but now, her performances took on a different purpose. They were no longer just a showcase of her talent or a demonstration of how technology could enhance classical music. Instead, each performance became an opportunity to tell a story, her story. And to remind people of the importance of following one's passion. In one such performance, Alexandra played in a packed auditorium in New York, a place that had always been close to her heart. As she sat at the piano, she reflected on everything that had led her to this moment. Her hands hovered above the keys as she looked out over the audience, sensing the weight of their expectations. But this time, she didn't feel burdened by it. Instead, she felt a deep sense of gratitude. Grateful for the journey, for the lessons learned, and for the freedom that came with trusting herself. She began to play a piece from Echoes of the Soul, but it wasn't the version everyone knew. This was different. It was a fusion of her original composition and elements from the music collective, a collaboration with some of the platform's rising stars. The sounds of different instruments filled the air, each note resonating with the unique voices of the young musicians she had mentored. The performance was both a celebration and a statement. The future of music was not just about one artist, one vision, or one way of creating. It was about community, collaboration, and pushing boundaries together. The audience was enraptured, not just by the beauty of the performance, but by the message it carried. As the final note played, the crowd erupted in applause, but Alexandra knew that the true impact of her work lay beyond the applause. She had created something that would outlive her own legacy, a community of artists empowered to explore their creative potential and redefine the future of music. Later that night, as Alexandra walked off the stage, she felt a sense of peace settle over her. She had found her purpose, and it wasn't about fame or accolades. It was about helping others find their voice, just as she had. And in doing so, she had redefined her legacy, not as a famous pianist or an innovator, but as a mentor, a creator, and a leader. Alexandra knew the journey wasn't over. The road ahead would continue to be filled with challenges, but now, she embraced them with a sense of calm. She had found her place in the world, not just as a performer, but as a force for positive change in the music industry. And no matter where the journey took her next, she would continue to lead with authenticity, passion, and the unwavering belief that music, like life, was meant to be lived with an open heart. As the years passed, Alexandra's influence in the music world only continued to grow. But unlike many other musicians who were content to ride the wave of their past success, Alexandra had become deeply focused on the future. She had learned the hard way that innovation was not just about pushing the boundaries of what was possible. It was about creating an environment where innovation could thrive organically, where the next generation of artists could have the freedom to explore and express themselves without the constraints of tradition or the pressure of perfection. With the music collective flourishing, Alexandra now found herself at the intersection of art, technology, and education. Her vision for the future had expanded beyond the walls of her retreat in the mountains or even the grand concert halls she once performed in. Now, she aimed to create a new kind of institution, one that could shape the music world for generations to come. Her idea was bold: to establish a school that blended the rich traditions of classical music with the limitless possibilities of modern technology. It wasn't enough to simply teach students how to play an instrument, she wanted to provide them with the tools to think critically, to collaborate, and to create across genres. And it wasn't just for classical musicians. The school would open its doors to everyone, from aspiring electronic music producers to composers experimenting with AI. The possibilities were endless. The announcement of the school, tentatively named the Alexandra Music Institute, caused a stir. News outlets, music critics, and aspiring artists all took notice. The idea of a place where classical music and cutting-edge technology could coexist in harmony was revolutionary. It was a natural extension of Alexandra's journey, from the traditional concert halls to the innovative space of the music collective, and now, a full-fledged institution dedicated to the next wave of musical creativity. As Alexandra walked through the halls of the newly built institute on opening day, she couldn't help but feel a deep sense of pride. The walls were lined with state-of-the-art recording studios, performance spaces, and classrooms. But it wasn't the equipment or the facilities that gave her the greatest sense of fulfillment, it was the people. Students of all backgrounds, all walks of life, filled the rooms, eager to learn, to grow, and to collaborate. They were the future of music, and Alexandra could feel that energy, that excitement, radiating from every corner. She took a moment to speak with some of the students, learning about their dreams and their goals. One student, a young woman from a small town in Texas, shared how she had always dreamed of combining electronic music with classical violin. Another student, a young man from Japan, spoke about his desire to create symphonic compositions using AI that could evolve in real time. Alexandra smiled at each of them, hearing the same curiosity and passion in their voices that had once driven her own journey. But what was truly revolutionary about the Alexandra Music Institute was its philosophy. It wasn't just about creating the next big star, it was about encouraging students to think beyond traditional boundaries. Alexandra's curriculum was designed to foster collaboration, with artists and technologists working together on projects that fused music, art, and technology. She invited musicians who had influenced her own journey to mentor the students, and the school quickly became a vibrant hub of creativity and innovation. However, even with the success of the institute, Alexandra faced challenges. Not everyone was receptive to her ideas. Critics, particularly those within the classical music establishment, questioned her methods. They argued that technology had no place in classical music and that the fusion of AI and human creativity was a step too far. Some felt she was diluting the essence of the music they had worked so hard to preserve. Alexandra, however, was undeterred. She had faced doubters before, and she had learned that true innovation often came from those willing to challenge the status quo. She welcomed the criticism, using it as fuel to keep pushing forward. She knew that the road she was walking was not always easy, but it was the only road that truly resonated with her. One evening, after a particularly intense debate at the institute regarding the future of classical music, Alexandra sat alone in her office, looking out over the city lights. The sound of a distant piano floated in from one of the practice rooms. It was a piece she had composed years ago, simple, yet full of emotion. She closed her eyes, listening, allowing the music to wash over her. It was then that she realized that, despite everything, she had achieved what she had always set out to do. She had helped reshape the way the world saw music, not just as a form of entertainment, but as a tool for connection, for expression, and for innovation. The world no longer viewed her as just a pianist, she was an architect of a new musical era. And the legacy she had built was not just about her personal journey, but about the countless others she had inspired and mentored along the way. As the days turned into years, the Alexandra Music Institute grew. Students came from every corner of the globe, each bringing their unique perspective and vision. The institute hosted workshops, international competitions, and collaborations with tech companies, pushing the boundaries of what was possible in the world of music. Alexandra watched as her students created works that no one had ever imagined, compositions that used AI to interact with live musicians in real time, holographic performances that brought classical music to new audiences, and electronic symphonies that blended genres in a way that was both beautiful and challenging. Her dream of a space where art and technology could coexist was no longer just a dream. It was a thriving reality. And the impact of her work continued to ripple outward, far beyond the walls of her institute. Alexandra had not only changed the world of music, she had redefined it, creating a space where creativity could flourish without limits. In the end, Alexandra knew that her journey was far from over. The road ahead was still full of possibilities, of new technologies to explore, and new artists to mentor. She had always believed in the power of music to change the world, but now, she saw that the world was changing because of the music. And that, she knew, was the true legacy she had worked so hard to build. As she walked across the campus, greeting students and faculty alike, she smiled to herself. The future of music was bright, and it was in good hands. With each note played, each collaboration sparked, and each boundary pushed, Alexandra knew that she had helped lay the foundation for a new musical revolution, one that would continue for generations to come. And for her, that was all that mattered. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?